Francis Scott Fitzgerald's novel The Great Gatsby is about the impossibility of recapturing the past, portrays the story of Gatsby's doomed love for the unattainable Daisy. It is considered a defining novel of the 20th century, which plays the role of a social commentary, and it has a good number of symbolic representation. We know that The Great Gatsby is famous for its symbols. Today we're going to discuss about the major symbols of this novel. So let's get started with the novel, with the symbols. Green light. The green light at the end of Daisy and Tom Buchanan's dock is there for a practical purpose. It is a beacon to alert boaters that there is an obstacle there that they need to avoid. However, for Gatsby, the light is something different. For him, the light symbolizes a dream, his dream of obtaining Daisy. In a broader terms, it also symbolizes the American dream. The novel opens with Gatsby reaching his open arms towards the green light, and at the end we see that it's Nick's realization that the dream is elusive. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms further. The novel questions the sacrifices individuals must make to achieve their dreams and whether the ends justify the means. In fact, the color green pops up everywhere in The Great Gatsby. Long Island Sound is green. George Wilson's haggard, tired face is green in the sunlight. And we see that the Michels describes the car that kills Myrtle Wilson as light green, although we know that it's yellow. Gatsby's perfect lawn is green, and the new world that Nick imagines Dutch explorers first stumbling upon is a fresh green breast. The symbolism of green throughout the novel is as variable and contradictory as the many definitions of green itself, and the many uses of money, like new money, natural, innocent, naive, and uncorrupted, but also rotten, gullible, nonsense, and sticky. So we can understand that for Gatsby, the green light is the symbol of hope that he will one day probably regain or get back Daisy, and he will be able to start afresh everything, his life with Daisy. The Valley of Ashes. Like many locations in The Great Gatsby, the Valley of Ashes is symbolic of its residents' social status, but the symbolism found here goes even further. First introduced in the second chapter of this novel, the Valley of Ashes is between West Egg and the New York City, consists of a long stretch desolate land created by the dumping of industrial ashes. It represents the moral and social decay that results from the uninhibited pursuit of wealth, as the rich indulge themselves with regard for nothing but their own pleasure. The Valley of Ashes also symbolizes the plight of the poor, like George Wilson, who live among the dirty ashes and lose their vitality as a result. All in all, the Valley of Ashes is an industrial wasteland covered in ash and soot. If the New York City represents all the mystery and beauty in the world, and West Egg represents the people who have got rich of the roaring economy of the roaring 20s, the Valley of Ashes stands for the dismal ruin of the people caught in between. Another important symbol in The Great Gatsby is the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckleburg. The abandoned billboard promoting Dr. T.J. Eckleburg's optician services is symbolic of the immorality of the 1920s. In a time of fierce capitalistic gains and elaborate wild parties, many Americans abandoned their religious morality in pursuit of the personal pleasure. The billboard serves as a reminder of God's watchful eyes, yet its faded, forgotten appearance suggests that the characters, except from the George Wilson, are no longer concerned with the consequences of their action. Even in the end, we see that George Wilson, who believed that God's eyes were watching down from the billboard, eventually breaks down and commits an immoral act by murdering Jay Gatsby. It may have several other meaning, like the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckleburg has several other meaning to several other characters. To Nick, the eyes seem to symbolize the haunting waste of the past, which lingers on though it is relatively vanished, much like Dr. T.J. Eckleburg's medical practice. The eyes can also be linked to Gatsby, whose own eyes, once described as vacant, often stare out, blankly keeping vigil. Or we can also relate to George Wilson. Dr. T.J. Eckleburg's eyes are the eyes of God, which he says that sees everything. Gatsby's mansion is famous for hosting those open parties for the people all around the Long Island, and we know that it had some symbolic meaning. Gatsby's mansion symbolizes two broader themes of the novel. First, it represents the grandness and emptiness of the 1920s boom. Gatsby justifies living in it all along by filling the house weekly with elaborate parties and celebrated people. Secondly, the house is the physical symbol of Gatsby's love for Daisy. Gatsby used his new money to create a place that he thought revealed the houses and the old money that had taken her away. Another interesting and deep symbol we find in The Great Gatsby is the owl-eyed man. We see a man in Gatsby's library examining the authenticity of the collection of books Gatsby has in that library. He is first surprised to find that Gatsby's books are real. Because of wearing a round-shaped weird spectacles, this man is known as the owl-eyed man. Owls are a kind of bird that they are meant to be animals having great visions. The owl-eyed man can act as one of the signs showing that Gatsby's identity and wealth are fake. The owl also represents a sense of wisdom, but can also symbolize an omen of death. The man, this owl-eyed man, was the one who had a car accident outside of Gatsby's house, thus symbolizing and foreshadowing Myrtle Wilson's death, followed by the tragic end of The Great Gatsby. Finally, we have East and West. We know that East Egg represents the old money. That means the people who have inherited their money from their family, and the West Egg represents the new money. That means those people who have gained their wealth and money by toil and their hard work. Nick describes the novel as a book about Westerners, a story of the West. We know that Tom, Daisy, Jordan, Gatsby, and Nick all hail from places other than the East. We know that Nick, Tom, and Daisy, they are from the Midwest. Also, Gatsby is also from the Chicago and another place. So, the romanticized American idea of going west to seek and make one's fortune on the frontier turned on its ear in the 1920s stock boom. Now, those seeking their fortune headed back east to cash in. But while Gatsby suggests that there was a kind of honor in the hard work of making a fortune and building a life on the frontier, the quest for money in the East is nothing more than that, a hollow quest for money. The split between the eastern and the western regions of the United States is mirrored in Gatsby by the divided line between East Egg and the West Egg. Once again, the West is the frontier of the people making their fortune, but these Westerners are as hollow and corrupt inside as the Easterners.